It's a great story and a great example. I love, for those of you watching that don't know the 5 steps, it's Corinne has just taken us through the first 3, but it's reframe. There's a lot to it. It sounds very simple, but there is actually quite a bit to it. And in a way, it's also quite simple once you sort of start living it. But it's reframe, and reframing the behavior. And then the second one is to recognize the stressors across 5 domains: emotion, biological, cognitive, social, and pro-social. Then reducing the stress, and we do that in a variety of ways. Number 4 is including coping mechanisms, but there's a number of ways that we reduce stress. Number 4 is it's about reflect. It's about developing an awareness of stress and calm in your own body. And number 5 is about respond, and it's about how we restore energy and resilience as well. So I just want to go back to the idea of co-reg, because it's really interesting, because here you have spent your whole life. I mean, you've learned self-reg fairly recently, but this is also, it's based in, in foundations of work that you've been studying for years, right, Corinne? And so what's interesting is that we can know like a lot of this stuff, and yet you still don't necessarily live it in your own life. And that's what I like about your example. I'll use one from my life. So my daughter, this is just a couple of weeks ago, just a small thing, and she's 9, and I'm taking her into, she's up later than usual, had been watching a movie. I go in around, she didn't have school the next day. So she'd been up, it was like 10:30, had been watching a movie with my mom, and I go in to get her into bed. And she tell her it's bedtime, but I did it very quickly, and she kind of storms away, in a huff. And so what do? Like, really? And what is it, right? What is it about that? It's because it's because she's having a response. We realized we do this thing where we talk about red brain and blue brain and things like that, but we actually realized that she was having a bit of a response because of the moment. I caught her off guard. She was tired. It was off of her routines. And I asked her in a way that just was too quick for her in that moment. But then when she responded, my defenses go up, right? So it's actually about realizing that happens to us, and we're human. And when what I love about reframing, learning to reframe your behavior as a parent as well, is that you become kinder to yourself, because you feel really guilty as a parent. Trust me, Martel, your mom probably feels so guilty for different things that she responded to, just like you do and we all do. And this isn't about making those go away completely, because you never do. We have human systems. It's a brain body thing, but it's about being gentler with ourselves and realizing, oh, wait a minute, that was my stress response system, right? And if I can reframe, and then I notice that, then I can be that co-regulator. I can be that calm, as I love Corinne's saying, loan you my calm. So I think that's just a really neat example. What was that? What was your experience on that, of that, Martel? How did that change things for you?
I think that when I started to learn what my mom was doing, it was for what it's worth, it was years after I had been in like really the thick of it, like after having learned about my disability, there were years when I was in my teenage years, I was in high school, and I really just disassociated myself from the condition and didn't want to learn about it, didn't want to think about it, didn't want to talk about it. And I don't think my parents did either. And I think that was probably at the time in my life for the better. I continued to play sports, and I continued to the best of my ability and do things that my friends were doing, and sort of just ignored the parts of it that felt hard. But probably that ignoring piece, was like something that harbored and like, brewed in me, and then would come out in these stress behaviors. And I even like look back now that I'm able to look at like what it would have been like to reframe. But at that time in my life, I was so looking for a way to distract myself from the problem of having RP and having this like looming, blindness in my future, that it was something that I couldn't control, couldn't fix. So I realize now that I was creating a lot of other problems in my life that were fixable problems. Like I was I had eating disorders. I had a lot of like, just drama that I would create, and, always looking for another issue to fix with myself, because they were problems that I could mend. And now that I'm able to reframe that, and I think if I had the steps back then, I would have. And I can catch myself now when I'm like, I still do it, of course, because it's my natural instinct to create another problem as a means to distract myself from the stressors of RP. But I can reframe and say, okay, I'm doing this, and it's that like first step of just like, I need to reframe this as I'm stressed about, X, Y, and Z, versus I'm making myself stressed about this new X, Y, and Z to replace it. So that was my first real like shifting of the lens, as I like to say it, or like shifting my perspective, and doing that reframing. And then, next probably was asking myself, well, what was the trigger that made me get stressed in the first place? So that's that step of recognizing. And for me, it could be anything. Like I said, it could be something physical, like it could be, overcrowded bar that all my friends are at that I can't really see anyone's faces, or it could be something more subtle. It could be, it could be like just a overwhelming fear of my future, and that like, what is it going to look like, and what is it going to feel like, and how, as my, whoever I end up with as my like life partner, how am I going to be so reliant on them? There's just like little questions that poke and prod at me, and I have to be able to recognize them as they come into my brain or my mind, and then use that third step of like reducing. So like my mom mentioned yoga, I have since become a advanced level yoga teacher and a restorative yoga teacher, and a life coach, because I noticed that yoga and mindfulness and life coaching is different because I'm trying to help people who may be going through what I'm going through. But the yoga for me has been that like reducing mechanism, or whether it's yoga and active in a classroom or yoga as meditation. But yeah, and then moving onward to just being able to reflect on the initial stressor, and look back on it, and notice how I feel about it now after I've reduced the stress versus how I initially felt about it, and then respond. And that can be within the span of weeks or hours, or that can even be within the span of like the moment it takes for me to react to someone bumping into me on the street. There's like this creation of space that I've found through my yoga practice and through the learning about self-reg formally, is that like I feel like I've had this ability to create, or learned this ability to create space in time where a sensory input comes into me, or an emotion comes in for me, and slow down the time between it coming in and my responding to it.
I love that. One of the things about, I just want to unpack a little bit around the yoga. That, first of all, holy wow, it's amazing things that you're doing. I mean, did you say you're an advanced yoga instructor? I knew you were a yoga instructor, but you're working on advanced.
Well, I just spent the month of January in India, completing my like 500 hours, which is, I wouldn't say that I like teach advanced classes, because I actually teach more therapeutic classes, because it's what I found that I need, and what I found that people with anxiety need. They need more therapeutic restorative classes, but I have the advanced level, like the 500 hours.
It's not small. Most yoga instructors just have the 200-hour
level
as well. So that is a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. Really huge. I want to ask you about something that I love about yoga. I have my 200 level. I'm not teaching now. It's been 2 years since I've taught. I miss it very much because I moved away from my studio. But one of the concepts I always loved about yoga, because it does reduce stress for sure, but it's very tied to step 4, which is about becoming stress aware. And I love the concept of taking yoga off the mat, even for those people that aren't yogis in the group. That's how you do it. Other people could find it through running, or they could find it through their art. There's different ways. There are all kinds of different ways to do it. but do you find that it helps you become more aware of your stress? So in other words, you're out walking around and you suddenly realize you're off, or that you're not in that centered place, or that you're able to bring more of that centered place out into, your everyday life and chaos on a busy street or what have you?
Oh my gosh, yes. And that is not only my recognition, but that's, thousands of years old theory, and that, what we do on the mat in a yoga practice is just really the first step of yoga. And the goal of yoga is not on the mat at all. It's what happens when you step off. It's that focus that we gain through movement and through breath, and like linking them together and taking that same focus and using it when you're not doing those postures. So definitely, and I stress that in all of the classes that I teach, is how can we take what we've done here in this class, in terms of creating calm, and or in terms of letting something go, and whether it's whether you're creating something or you're releasing something, because a lot of times it's that you need to release through your practice, and then taking that with you when you step off, and again, that's just yoga in and of itself.
So now that you've gone through this, you working through this as a mom and daughter, do you still find there are moments are there still bad moments? Are there still, like I told you with my daughter, do you still have moments where and how are those different than they would have been in the past?
We just talked about this too.
Yeah, we just were talking about this, and I think I have to say, even for my husband and his relationship with Martel, I think he and my son, we've all sort of benefited from this process that we've gone through. But one of the things that I've come to recognize with Martel, that when something happens where she has to ask for help, like it might be a ride to something, or feeling stuck or dependent on us or her boyfriend or the bus or whatever it is, I see a spike in her irritability. And I think because we've been on this journey together, that she allows me to say, hey, you're doing that. Or if that doesn't happen in the moment, I can be pretty confident that if I just step back and allow her space and time, that I'll probably get a text within a half hour that says, sorry, I was feeling stuck
this way,
and I reacted to you in a bad way. And it just can be okay.
It's a recognition, though. Yeah.
Right. I think there's just such a different tolerance we have for each other, and resilience, that comes with that. Sort of acceptance of this is going to be a part of our life, our relationship. We have to, I don't know, this sounds very cliche, but we have such a deep relationship because we've had this experience in our life. And I think as a family unit, it's made us much closer, and sort of solidified for us that our journey as a family is as a unit. And so I sort of treasure that in a weird way. Yeah. I know it's so much, and I also acknowledge to her all the time that it's easier for me because I'm not the one who's experiencing this. But I think that as I look at her as a young woman, and how proud I am of her, it's amazing. How she can articulate her thoughts and her ideas, and realize that she has a gift to give other people. Selfishly, I have to say that in my own work, in my own practice, I've become such a better practitioner, because when I am now working with a parent of a child with a disability and I see their pain, and I have a first person understanding of it that I didn't have before. And that is an amazing, it gives you such insight, I have to say.